we'll just go with it then,
We'll
basically.
just go with it. Yeah.
Okay.
So tell us about your history, where you're at now, but maybe just how you got here. Two techs here talking today. Two techs.
Yeah, oh, good.
Yeah.
So, I came to vet med later in life. I spent the first half of my professional career as a book editor. I was a book editor for college level academic texts, and I worked 100% freelance by myself at home. And it was great. It was great for the first 10 years or so. And then I started to feel restless. And then when I turned 40, I knew I felt like I was spending too much time by myself. And I was starting to get a little bit concerned about that. And vet med had always kind of been in the back of my head. But I come from a little bit of a snooty academic family, and doing anything other than a sort of academic related life was just not acceptable. But I got brave. I sold my business when I turned 40, and I went back to school. I went to vet tech school at Purdue, and I felt like I had come home. I loved it from day one. I knew that I had made the 100% right decision for me. After school, I worked at a couple of different practices. At the time, I was married to a Navy pilot, so we moved a lot. He retired, and we settled in DC in 2012, and I was one of the founding staff at a what was then a startup vet here. We had 1.5 full-time vets, 2 techs, and 1 person at the desk. That was in January of 2012. When I left the practice in June of 2021, we had 12 docs and about 60 staff. So I helped to really grow it, and it was a fantastic ride. It really was. And then, yeah, I never really believed that, like, old expression that money changes folks, but it did. The 2 doctors who founded it were really affected by their success, and the culture changed, and it stopped being about providing the best care to the patients and to the clients, and that being first, and it swapped, and it became all about the bottom line, and the culture just changed, and it wasn't for me. So I started to look, and that's when I became a practice consultant with AAHA.
And you've been with AAHA for how long now?
I've only been with AAHA for 7 months.
7 months.
But
yeah.
So far so good. I love
Yeah.
it. I love talking to folks. I love consulting. It's a great fit for me.
I really appreciate everything that you just said, because what I'm pulling from that is, even early on, you were very you were very introspective. You know, you had a level of self-inquiry that, even if it wasn't explored because of the background that you grew up in, just having that level of awareness right? And the level of awareness to say, I'm spending a lot of time alone and I don't know if that's really serving me, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know for me, I used to research the science of relationships as humans because many veterinary professionals will tell you this, right? We get along better with animals.
Yes.
And so we have this mentality that we don't need people. But the science will tell you completely otherwise, and
Mm-hmm.
that the happiest people in the world will live longer when they have quality relationships, and more
Yes.
than just one, more than just like with your mom or your spouse, but you have to have this network. We actually have a talk on, the well-being army, because it's so paramount to our health and well-being as humans.
Yeah.
We are pack creatures. But I had to convince myself of that, because what I had grew up with was just, that mentality, but that mentality was not serving me, right?
No.
And then the bravery that it took to step outside of the family, the family
Exactly.
beliefs, right?
Yep.
Like that's major.
Yeah.
And whether it's career, religion, sexual orientation, like we're seeing so much of this these days. But it's tough. And even what we're seeing is probably it's like the flea life cycle, right? The tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
There's probably lots of other people. For every person that stands up and breaks free of those generational cycles, there's so many people who just aren't there yet, right? And then what grew the clinic from itty bitty to big was probably not the bottom line, right? Because like you said, what was at the forefront of that cart, putting people first, putting animals first, putting quality first, got the growth. But then when the bottom line became the first picture, things degraded. And so I remember when we started Get Motivated, 2017, 2018, we had to make a case that well-being, putting that first, would organically change the bottom line. And we had to find research outside of the industry, because the data wasn't here, but all the scientists in the industry, all your medical professional, all the data junkies are like, you got to show me the numbers,
Right.
And so there had to be this proof. And now we're seeing this research happening in the industry. One day, maybe Get Motivated will have its own research, but even without the numbers, we have believed so strongly. I mean, we're proof positive. Our hospitals, just like yours, the lights were not on. There came a point where, like a trick, like a domino, leave, your rock stars leave, one more rock star leaves, and then everything, literally a year after, we were at this practice working together, the lights were shut off. It was no longer a clinic. It was no longer open.
Oh, wow.
I mean, this was a 5-doctor practice, I think. And, and it's like you said, there's a change, there's some sort of catalyst, whatever it might be. I think it's probably different for each people, and it's always a recipe. It's never just one thing. It's kind of like divorce, right? It's always a recipe of what gets you there. It's not just because of one leader. It's not just because of one bad day. It's a culmination of things. And then that cascade that happens. And then there's the lack of acknowledgement that comes when they're not looking at, they're just like, they chalk it up to something else, right? They misdiagnose what actually happens, looking at these symptoms rather than the root cause. So I think that's really important when we look at leadership within vet med. Doesn't matter what role you are, whether you're in the administrative side, maybe a C-suite level exec, or if you're in the hospitals, or if you're an aspiring leader, or if you're just quote, air quotes around you're just a professional within the industry. You lead your life. You lead change always. Like what we do day to day definitely leads how our hospitals and our organizations run. It changes how your life runs. And I say that leadership is a lifestyle, because how we behave in one place is nearly exactly the same to how we behave outside of it. You know,
100%.
our family units are like little organizations, you know, and your friend units are sort of the same way. And every time you get involved in a hobby, it's the same way. You know, you can't, my guy, he can't pick up a hobby without trying to, you know, all of a sudden he's like the go-to person, you know, like he just wanted to drive RC cars. And then all of a sudden he's like running this little business. You know? That's just, it's just innately in some people. So I think those are all really powerful.
Yeah. You have just described my exact journey with this last place, because I used to say that I counted myself lucky to get up every single day and to go to work at this place, because it was the most special community that I had ever known. And people all throughout town said, "Oh, that's where you work? They're the best. They are so nice. They are so completely like different than like all of like the other vets I have like ever known." And then slowly, I can't even exactly identify when, but slowly there was a change, and I started to hear myself complaining about work, which I never did. And we had more client complaints about the way that they were treated, or the way that their pet was, or the billing, or the prices. And it just, when I started to see all of that, I said to myself, there's a change here, and I don't like it. And I always fought for my team, and I always tried to do what I thought was best to support them. And I stopped being heard. I started to feel like I was talking into the wind to the two guys who were in charge. It didn't matter what I thought, what I said, I wasn't heard. And that's when I started to look around, because not just from a self-serving point of view, but everybody wants to be heard. And I had built that place. I gave it my all, and they got me through the death of like a parent, and they got me through a divorce. And I felt like that was my home. And when that changed, and I didn't feel like I was heard anymore, it was really hard for me. It was, I kind of felt like I'd been kicked out of the nest, you know? And that's when I started to look around, because I just didn't feel heard. I didn't feel valued, despite a decade of my life that I had, you know, given them.
And it was the same people, but they just
exactly the same people.
Yeah.
Exactly the same people.
Yeah. And you know, that's something that we hear from professionals so I spent 11 years at my first clinic. And that's not why I left my first clinic. Luckily, my first clinic, like yours, they're my people. They were my work family. They got me through a lot of stuff, and they supported my leaving. I left because I had gotten married and I moved to North Carolina, but they supported me on that day. And I still talk to them. I just sent myself an email last night. I think I want to call my leadership there and maybe do something with them with Get Motivated. But what I'm hearing though is, even when we leave practices, just like coming out of a generational family cycle, there's a lot of guilt and fear of leaving behind the other professionals that we love.
Totally. My tech staff were all, I mean, and again, not to sort of toot my own horn, because that's not who I am, but the day before I left, one of the techs came to me and said, there isn't going to be anybody here anymore who cares about us. What are we going to do? Nobody is going to listen to us. And it broke my heart. I was like, geez, maybe I shouldn't leave. And she's right. They aren't going to have anybody left to sort of advocate for them. But then my like dear sweet, like whatever, my like dear sweet whatever husband said, I know it's hard for you because you have like a little bit of like a mama bear syndrome. You have to take care of yourself first. They will be okay, you know. And it was really hard to hear this girl say, nobody's going to care about us after you leave. It was really hard.
It's the oxygen mask theory, though.
Yeah.
Or not theory, you know, it's the practice of the oxygen. It's not a theory, you know, it's proven. No. And what great advice to support you and he's right? Because without you being okay, you can't go on to help other people.
Right.
And at some point, you know, I'm sure, but that leadership that I received, the leadership that you delivered, empowers people enough that, you know, baby bird's got to fly the nest, right? At some point we've got to advocate for ourselves in our own health, in the medical system, in our jobs, in our lives, or do something, right? Because it's really not someone else's responsibility. And that's where boundaries come in with well-being. I can't work out for you. I can't eat carrots for you and expect that your body change. And this goes both ways, right? It's being able to assert those in a really mindful, compassionate way that lets people know that you still care for them and you're willing to help them in some manner, but this manner isn't going to work because it's not serving us, not as a group, not as individuals, and trying to lead with your hands tied behind your back, right? That's something, you know, at my practice, when we started get motivated, we had our practice manager, and then we had team leads. I was one of those team leads. And, you know, we had different roles, different job duties, but also we very much were in sync with our chief of staff, our management, and then the leaders. But being able to do that, there's still someone higher up, right? From all of us. And when that changed, you can't always lead, right? Because you're not being heard. And what's that blanket statement of trying to treat things, whether it be a hospital or each problem, with a one-size-fits-all approach, not acknowledging the differences in the people, even in, let's say, you know, coaching or development or disciplinary, you know, not being able to tailor that isn't effective. And yet, you know, sometimes there's still a resistance in that, because they want sort of this policy approach. And I've been on both ends of that. You know, I've actually experienced that, the other end of that one way straightforward policy approach. And I know how that feels to not be acknowledged as a person. And when you've got 20 years under your belt and you're approached with like, hey, this wasn't right, and, you know, there's no other context provided, it's like just mind-blowing that the view is so narrowed. And so I think as a profession, as individuals, you know, we just have to do better, right? As just humans, you know, like as humans on this planet doing this together, like we have to do better. And so I love being able to have these inspiring conversations, because I think there's going to be at least one, if not more, people who listen to this story and go, I've got to put the oxygen mask on, right? If Amy can do it, I can do it. Yeah. And then you thrive, because what, you know, people fear, like, what's on the other side of me?
Change is terrifying. Change is terrifying. And I had a really good deal there. I worked I worked 3 days a week, 12-hour days, but still I worked Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So I had like whatever, a 4-day weekend every single week.
Mhm.
I had 6 weeks of paid time off.
Mhm.
And I could still kind of come and go as I please. I had a really good on paper. I had a really good life there. And again, my husband, David, bless his heart, I said, what am I doing? Why am I leaving this? I have 6 weeks of paid time off. And he said, because you are not the same person that I met. All you ever do is complain about your job. We never talk anymore. You come home, you're crabby, you're short, you're like snappy. He said, who cares about like whatever our sort of vacation time? He said, you're not the same person. And that really like hit home. And the minute that I submitted my resignation, I felt it shift. I felt like I got myself back, and then I wasn't squinchy and mad all the time, because I just felt angry all the time because I felt like I was being ignored. And I just felt like this all the time. And I don't feel like that anymore.
Now, few things. One, how it looks on paper versus how it feels is so important. That is a principle that I teach all of the time, because we as Western culture, type A, or even not type A, like everything in our formal education system says paper. Like, here's a to-do list, check this box, you get a gold star. And so that's what we aim for, right? And then there's lack of fulfillment. Me in my early 20s, on paper, there should have been no reason that I had the clinical diagnoses that I had. But internally, my internal environment is exactly why that I struggled. And so if you don't address the internal environment, then your external is bleak.
Yeah.
The other thing, so that's majorly powerful when it comes to well-being and your life. My other question is is he your current husband, or was he who you divorced?
He is my current husband.
He's your current husband.
He's my current husband. Yes. Yeah. I have known him for 3 years. We've been married for just over a year. So I was navigating second chapter of my life, new marriage, and this man who I just adored, saying it stung. He said, you are not the same person. And I was like, that's not what I want to hear from a brand new husband. That is not what I want.
And how quickly that changed, right? It wasn't like a 10-year process, but how quickly that change occurred. And I love that, because I remember, so I've been divorced myself, and I remember coming home, and this is when I'm in North Carolina. I had found a clinic that I was at, and before I put my 2 weeks in, I was coming home every night, not greeting my, at the time then husband. I would go into the shower and I would just cry. And I mean, just nightly, right? And he was in the military, and he went to deployments.
Oh my God, we do have the same life.
He would come home, and after his last deployment, he was different. We had known each other for 10 years, and we're still very civil to this day. I think I have a really, my current fiance now, he doesn't have a great relationship with his ex. We co-parent one of our kids together with his ex. And then I've got my ex who, we've got a great relationship post, relationship.
Right.
And because there's a ton of respect that went into our who we were as people, even outside of the marriage. And so we were able to maintain a lot of that, but it was tricky through the divorce, right? Obviously.
Right.
But it was a recipe. It was a total recipe of why we're separated. But I'll tell you who I'm with now. I've been with him for, I'm bad with dates, but somewhere around 7 years. Mm-hmm. The level of intuition, the level of, sensitivity, he is able to bring me, he's able to ground me in a way that I've never experienced with another human. And he does it naturally. Amy, it's so wild because I have spent nearly 20 years now on this well-being journey of aligning everything in who I am as a person and everything in my life. And there's a lot of work that I do in order to do that. And he will come at me with like the most Gandhi of support in the most difficult times. And he's able to show up for me in these times where I'm really struggling. And that's what'll happen is it'll be like this moment that just provides such clarity when I'm in a fog, because even as a well-being enthusiast, you know, we're still humans. There's things that we go through and I get fogged and then it clears it up. And then, you know, 10 minutes later, it's like back to caveman, you know, it's like, wait, we're doing what this weekend? You know, I didn't see that on the calendar, you know, but I tell you, you know, there's these moments and it's just effortless. And there's times where he'll tell me, I remember probably 3-4 years in, I said, it was a couple of days after this sort of situation happened. I struggled. He showed up. And a couple of days after, I was able to say, I really want to let you know how grateful I am for you showing up for me in this moment. And he said, Renee, it's got to be through sheer osmosis, because 5 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to sit in a room with you crying, let alone hold this space for you and help you through it. He's like, I think just being around you is like this is just you coming through me or something.
Wow.
And I was like, and it's this, and now, have you ever read The Seat of the Soul?
No.
Oh, you should get that book.
No, I don't know it. What is it? The Seat of the Soul?
The Seat of the Soul by Gary Zukav.
Okay, I'm writing it down.
He talks about being able to spiritually develop with people. And that, you know, and I've always believed that people come in and out of our lives for a purpose.
I agree.
And so, but with Quincy and with Neil is my fiance. I think that these people in my life, probably much like Dave is for you, are these people who have been brought to us to help us develop mutually, and to really raise our consciousness and raise our level of well-being as humans, as caregivers in a caregiving profession, and even outside of what we do to pay the bills, but just in life, right? Applying this level of humanity, kindness, openness, just being open, right? Even if you're just accepting or respecting without, you know, enabling or supporting, just being open to what the experience is for other people but it's a skill. It's a skill that anyone can develop. And it feels like home, right? It feels like home. It feels warm, and it supports all of the things that we want to feel. And I'm sure there's some, you know, there's the physiology that will flow with that. The hormones that will bond you, right? The oxytocin and things like in those moments like that, which just fuel that cycle that we want. Fuel the cycle that we want versus what you're experiencing when you're stressed out, your adrenaline's going, your cortisol's going, and you do become this short fuse. I mean, I went through anger management in my first marriage.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow. What a change for you.
Yeah. You know, my best friend though, she said, she knew me in my 20s. She knew me in my 30s. And she said, when we went through the divorce, she said, you know, Renee, you're handling this with such grace. And I was like, whoa, I'm glad you think so. Because it didn't always feel like that. Sometimes it didn't, you know. But I was, you know, comparatively to who I was as a evolving person. Mm-hmm. And it's through this work, you know, through these realizations, through this openness. Because what's on the other side of that? If Dave had told you that, and you were playing ping pong communication style, you could have easily dismissed what he said, not taken it to heart, not done anything about it. And then what's the result, right? And sometimes that happens when we're feeling defensive or we're feeling, you know, attacked. And so there's such a power in introspective work that gets us to better communication, that gets us to better relationships, that puts us in better jobs for our overall life alignment. What good is 6 weeks of vacation going to do if I don't want to spend time with you?
Exactly. Like, and I think before my divorce, I had never been through therapy. I had never gone. I grew up in a very stereotypical New England, non-emotional family. Life happens, you deal with it, you don't talk about anything. We never talked about anything in my entire childhood, adulthood. We didn't talk about stuff in our family. And then my husband literally left me in the middle of the night. I didn't know that it was going to happen. And I thought, I need some therapy. I need someone to help me. And I started to go, and it changed my world. And I finally realized that I needed to look after myself, and that wasn't selfish, because I kind of grew up hearing that if you put yourself first, that was bad. Mm-hmm. That was being selfish. That was being self-centered, and that was bad. But when I started to go, I just thought, wow, it's okay if I think of myself first, and if I take care of me. And we might have talked about this before. I kind of equate my first marriage to me being that frog in the pot on the stove. Mm-hmm. The temperature for that frog gets hotter and hotter and hotter, but he just kind of adjusts until that pot boils, and then the frog dies. I think I was getting sadder and sadder and sadder, and I felt more and more unhappy in my first marriage, but it happened so gradually that I didn't notice it. I just thought that it was life, you know. And then about 6 months after my husband left, a friend that I hadn't seen for 2 or 3 years said, I have never seen you so happy. You're back, and it's great. And I thought, I am back. I do feel happy. So this is what I'm supposed to feel like. I'm not supposed to feel like I did for the past 5 or 6 years. I didn't know that was even happening to me, if that makes any sense.
100%. You don't even know that there's an option otherwise, right? Because what is the world around us? What are the relationships that we observe? You are breaking all sorts of, cycles in, in culture, in society, in family units, right? Because that's what people are seeing, and if you don't stop to even evaluate it, you would never question it. because you're just indoctrinated to believe whatever. And, and all you see is, your parents and your family and your home. And, like I told Braden at one point, I said, this was a few years ago, I said, did you know that your dad had 2 homes when he was growing up? And he was like, no. And I said, I bet you that if you start talking with your friends more, you'll know that there's more boys with 2 homes. And because, the kid's like navigating 2 homes and he thinks he's the only one, but he's not the only one.
No.
And that's how we feel, right? No matter what it is. And so when you stop to look at it and go, oh, but there's not everyone who's experiencing something like that. This is how it's supposed to look.
Right.
Even now in our relationship, we're dual entrepreneurs. And we talk to other people about relationships and people who've been together for 40, 50 years. And they might say, yeah, we don't do this or that. And we question whether or not we want to take that on as a belief, meaning, is it acceptable to spend less and less time together? And we say, no, temporarily, sure. If we need to have a tough week where, he's working 60 hours, sure. Long term, absolutely not. Like, I disagree. Who says it has to be that way? Who says that that's what creates success? Who says that that's the only way that your business can succeed? And Quincy and I have found out that it's not that way. And most of the successful people in our world, if you really talk to them, whether it's Oprah, Kobe Bryant, or any other successful person, you will hear a very different conversation than just, I grinded my way to success. There's something that happens that will catapult you when you come into alignment with who you are as a true person. And it's through doing this work that you've done. It's through having these realizations and being open to that, and then taking the next step. Like, oh yeah, CBT, that feels really good, and and it's not as scary, it's really helpful. And putting myself first doesn't have to be, when we're young adults, I think that there's that hard mentality of putting yourself first. Like, well, this is just my way or the highway. And we kind of have this attitude. It's more
if
of
you
a
don't
chip
like
on
it,
your
I don't care. Yeah.
That's right. Peace. Right. Chip on the shoulder. But it's the same concept. Put yourself first, but not with a chip on your shoulder. It's through compassion. It's through being able to communicate effectively, because when you can communicate effectively, why it is that you are saying no, or why it is that you're putting up this boundary, people understand, and they can see and they can feel what it is that you're feeling. And it comes off the paper, and then they're more likely to support it. Right. If I had left my clinic for 11 years and I just put in 2 weeks notice, I'd be like, what the heck is going on, Renee?
Right.
But if I said, which I did, I said, we're this is our plan. We're going to do this thing. And, here's my feelings behind it. They're like, heck yeah. What can I do to support you? And so that's what we find, and then we find connectivity. We feel belonging, even when, we're distance apart. Like, that's the recipe. And there's not enough people modeling that behavior. I grew up in Detroit, Metro Michigan. When I really struggled, this was like the early 2000s. Conversations like this weren't happening on the internet. People didn't have these sort of resources at their fingertips. And who do you talk to about this stuff? It's really, people aren't having this kind of conversation at barbecues and nowadays they're not on Instagram, And so it's so necessary that we have these conversations that teach not just like, this is the movie, but these are the things that will actually get you from point A to point B, and they'll shorten the gap. Like, no one needs to take 20 years to get from point A to point B. I mean, it is a journey, right? It's not about the destination. There's going to be little paths or like little bricks along the path. It doesn't all happen at once. But you incrementally like do feel better. And then when you master this skill, you go, oh, now there's this other thing. But because you have this, it makes that next thing easier.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like,
I feel like my journey from book editor to Navy wife to tech to divorce, all of this stuff, and all of it maybe not very nice stuff, but I feel like at age 56, I'm finally the person that I'm supposed to be. And I'm finally comfortable in my own skin, warts and all. I finally feel like this is who I am. And it's just such a nice feeling to know that brick by brick, I got here, you know?
yes, the adversity, and imagine I'm the same way, right? Looking back on it, I see now the purpose that it had. But imagine it had you or I listened to this conversation when we were going through it, to go, what's showing up in my life right now is here to serve me. It's not presenting that way. It looks like it's here to make you miserable. But if we can find the purpose, and here's the thing, this is what Steve Jobs will tell you. You can't connect the dots looking forward. If you sink into that belief and know, I'm just going to let you sit with that, right?
Yeah.
If we sink in and surrender to, I'm not going to be able to solve why I'm going through this adversity right now, but I damn well trust that there is a reason for it. And that reason is to serve me. It is to help me create who I am. It's not about finding who you are. It's about creating who you are. And if we can believe that, then it might still be hard because it's hard.
Right.
But it might not be a level 10 or 20 hard. Maybe that just softens it a little bit and makes it not just tolerable, but it can make it feel like, is there something I can enjoy in this? You know, looking for those freedoms, looking for those opportunities, looking for things that don't just tell us the world is falling on our head. What's the Chicken Little thing? Like the world is caving in. Because that's what it feels like when
it does.
I mean, when I went through divorce, I thought I've exited a couple of relationships in my lifetime, but I've never exited a lifestyle. Right. So that was the big mental piece for me, that I wasn't just separating from another human. I mean, there was a lifestyle that we had created. And that was the tricky part of trying to navigate not just the logistics of that, but the emotional uncoupling that comes from that enmeshment of, you know, creating a life with someone and doing it in a way that doesn't leave you broken and resentful and, you know, like dragons to each other, because that wasn't, you know, it's not because, you know, like that's not just how we wanted to be.
Right.
And so it really is like this process, you know.
I had that moment. My husband left, and then because divorce laws in DC are what they are, we had to wait a full year until we could file.
Yep.
So and I had never really been alone in my life. I went from my parents to a dorm to my first husband. I had never been on my own without some kind of support net until then. We sold our house, and I had this little moment when I signed a lease on a place by myself for the first time. I was like, this is really scary. There's nobody to would ever help me pay the rent, to help me pay the gas bill, this is all on me for I was 50, and I thought, I've never done this before in my life. I was terrified, Renee. I was terrified. I didn't think that I could do it by myself. And then as soon as I signed that lease, I thought, I'm my own person now. It was my sort of like epiphany moment that I knew that I would be able to get by myself. You know, it's these like little teeny things, you know. Whoever thought, you know, signing a lease would have been such a big event in my life. I would never have guessed that.
You know, that's so funny that you say that, because that epiphany. So I had it in the 20s, and it goes like, I don't know how, but I know that I'm capable. If anyone's capable of coming away from all of the diagnoses and all of the things that weren't working to find happiness, I was like, there's people out there that do this. I can do this. And then I did it. And then the divorce happened, and same thing. I don't know how to do this. I don't know what the landscape is. I don't know what how we're going to do this, but I was like, we can do this. We can do this. I can keep this home. I can keep my kids, my dogs at the time. I can stay, stay civil. We can do this. And that belief alone is what got me through. And I don't know where it came from. Yeah. I don't know where it came from, Amy. I really don't. And
you just kind of, I think we do it at the time because we have to. We don't have any other choice.
Yeah. But when we have that belief, it's like, if we could apply that to other things, like I can find another job, or I can pay for things with making less money. I can give up the benefits package to find, when we can apply that same belief to those things, it makes it not just possible, but it makes it probable. And that alone is sometimes just what you need. And so did you find support beyond yourself after you felt like, resilience, self-reliance is really huge. But beyond that, like after that pillar was formed, did you find more support?
I did. And it came from very odd places. It came from friendships that I had developed in my first marriage that I had kind of let go because I didn't know that I was struggling to be happy and struggling just to get by day by day. And I kind of there were three folks that I had I had always been, at the time, years ago, I had always felt really, really close to. And then life happens and you stop connecting with these folks. And I realized how much they meant to me and how much I missed them. And I sat down, and I hadn't told a lot of people that I had been left. So I sat down and I wrote this very long, heartfelt, email. And I said, I'm sorry, I haven't been a very good, I'm sorry, this is hard for me. Okay. I said, Chad could be very difficult, and he didn't like to have a lot of friends. He didn't feel the need for that sort of emotional bond. So I kind of took that on, and I let you kind of go by the wayside. But I hope it's not too late. I would really like to have you guys back back in my life.
Mhm.
And to a person, they all three said, of course I'm here. I never left. When are you coming here? When are you going to come, come and like stay, visit? You need us all now. And it was just the nicest thing. And they have been to this day now it's been 4.5 years. I talk to them all the time, and they have stayed as my like support system through this whole thing. And it's been amazing.
I love it. I love it. Like, that's the how to, is being open, but then actually, taking the action to
Mhm.
open that door, and boom, that's what's on the other side of it.
Yeah.
I love that. I think
And I
that's
thought that, when I reached out to them, they might say, you know, you haven't been a very good friend to us over the past decade. We don't know why. You kind of like abandoned us, so we've moved on. But
mm,
they didn't say that, and
mm,
it was they were such an amazing support to me through this whole thing, through this whole new life that I have.
yeah. Ah, that's so awesome.
Yeah.
That's so awesome. I love to hear that. Man, we're coming to a close with time, so I want to bring us into this close. This has been such a great conversation. I'm so inspired by that. It gives me so much motivation to move forward, and I'm confident that when people listen to this, people will resonate with it. And I think that's really powerful, because just like you with that thought, we fear what's on the other side of us expressing that really raw side of ourselves. And we might think that there's badness, something
Yeah.
negative that's going to come out of it. And most of the time, it's not. And I know that now. And that's why we do have these conversations. And I think that it completely impacts, uh, especially our personal relationships, impact our work, and
Mhm.
that work impacts our personal relationships. And that's why Get Motivated is in existence, right? Not just to support our clinical skills, but to support our life skills, because they do go hand in hand. And so I thank you for being so open about
Oh,
this journey that you've been on. And I want to, if there's something that you would like to leave people with, whether it comes to leadership in the practices, or uh, leading your own life, is there we've had a lot of epiphanies, and it's hard to boil them down. And maybe that's just it, right? Like, it's never just
right.
one thing. But if there is something that is like an undercurrent for you, what that might be for people to know.
I guess when you were just speaking about our last hour, I just thought to myself, I I never really thought that anybody would be interested in my story or what I have to say. And I've never been a person who's stepped out into like the public light a lot. So I kept thinking, nobody's going to care about my life. Nobody's going to care what I have to say. But when like whenever I just heard you speaking, I thought, well, if what I have endured over the past couple of years, if one person hears it and they have the courage to just try something new, even though terrifying it's terrifying, if one person, whatever, thinks about it, then I guess what I have been through counts. It matters, and what I have to say matters. If it helps one tech leave, like whatever, a toxic workplace, then I guess I've helped. And I guess that has more value than I can say.
Yes. And that's what I love about the way technology has helped advance our life. Right? Because like we said, with people weren't having these conversations and they weren't accessible at our fingertips 20 years ago. It definitely does. You matter for your own self. And absolutely that story matters for other people. And we continue to get not pounded by the universe, but sort of in a way, everything that we do through Get Motivated, sometimes actually just I don't know, last week or something, I said to Quincy, I said, when we're building these presentations, that was the one thing when we first started speaking, right? I was a tech assistant, whatever. And then we started speaking, right? Like we weren't trained speakers, but we had to train ourselves in speaking and becoming comfortable with sharing our stories. But I would say that like, this is just a conversation with one person. If I can help one person in the audience, then this hour of my life, what I'm sharing with people would matter. It would make an impact, and it does. And so every time, if I shift back into, I don't know what side of Renee it is, but it's this teacher modality where I want to teach through the data or through the techniques more than teaching through the stories. We need the techniques, we need the how-to, the equip the hands. There's a speaker I'd listened to, he said, you inspire the heart or the mind, you equip the hands, and you move the feet, right? So we're inspiring, we're giving the how-tos, and then you're equipping them, but then also leading them to action by moving the feet. And so it's remembering those things and sinking back into that. And each time we do that, it propels us forward, and not just as a company, but as individuals. And the power, I'll tell you, so our Vet Candy show, we have a show with Vet Candy, the most viewed episode. We've done 2 seasons now, and I've got another show. We've done 2 seasons, seasons 2, the most watched video, 500,000 views. Love. Wow. Love was the most viewed episode. And so we've got, 12 episodes or something under our belt, all sorts of different categories in well-being. But people want to know, like, this is sometimes the most important thing to people and so we didn't know where this conversation was going to go. We didn't talk about a ton of planned stuff, but I think what comes out is organically, this is what people are going to want to hear. The profession is 85% probably growing female. We know that we're not the only 2 females, going through any sort of journey. And what I love, and this is something that's really, really powerful, Quincy and I, we talk about this all the time, is the messages transcend generations. It doesn't matter what chapter you're at in life, because that's the real power in it. And so knowing these types of things will serve you at any chapter in your life. And so I think that's really powerful. And whether it's as an entrepreneur or as a clinical role, like your personal relationships, it does impact it. And sometimes when you don't take notice of that, there's this resistance that builds up, and things get sort of rusted. But if you can free that rust, sometimes, people might think, put the bottom line first, or work harder, work longer hours. No. Get in alignment. Get in alignment with what your core values are. What is the priority? Because that is the big domino that's going to release the resistance.
Yeah, everything else will fall into place after that.
Yeah, it really will. I'm so thankful that you have shared this with us. This isn't easy. I know it's not easy, and it's it's public. I mean, it's probably not Oprah public, but it's public.
It's more public than I've ever been before. Yeah, it's more public than I've ever been.
So I thank you for that.
Thank you for the chance. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so, this has been fantastic.
I agree.
I love being able to connect with you, and I'm so happy that you're in a place where, like you said, you're doing consulting, you're talking with people, you're thriving. It's a new skill set that you're working with on your own. And, let's tell people like where they can, do you have a LinkedIn where people can get more?
I do have a
LinkedIn. If they
LinkedIn.
wanted to connect with you. Okay. I can put those in the show notes too.
Yeah, I do have that. I admit I am not a very social media person, so my LinkedIn is probably a little bit neglected. But I am there. I don't have a Facebook page. I don't have any other socials, so they can reach out to me there. I don't even mind if people. I don't know if this is against a motivated a protocol, but I don't mind if they like reach out to me at my own whatever, what you call it, email. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't mind that at all.
Yeah, you can even provide us one that's maybe separate from your work email or something like that. But
I can do that afterwards. Sure. Yeah,
absolutely. And I'll tell you, people, I've not I don't think I've historically gotten a ton of feedback from podcasts directly through email. We get them from speeches a lot. People will email us like after a talk, and they'll go, hey, and again, it's not always on the technique. Sometimes it is. They're like, oh, boundaries have changed my life, things like that. But sometimes it's just like, thank you for sharing, and here's the inspiration. So I think, and if you're listening, let's do that. If you resonate with this, email Amy, email Renee, just let us know that it does make an impact, so that we can keep sharing, we can keep it up and keep serving the community in this way, because it's so powerful.
It is. It's very powerful. And I think we all and this might be a little bit too out there, but I think so many of us just feel like we're just chugging along on our own little journey by ourselves, but we're not. There's a million other people who are doing and experiencing the exact same thing you are. You just don't know because you can't see it yet.
Right.
And
you didn't ask, right? You didn't ask, or you didn't express it.
We don't know to ask. Yeah. We don't know we don't know that we even can ask for help.
My chief of staff, probably, say 5 years ago, one time I told her that I had overcome anxiety and I was no longer on meds and things. And she's like, you had anxiety? What? Or like, you used to smoke, and or what because who you are now, like people, and I wasn't like, hi, my name is Renee, like, this is my story.
Right.
So people just don't know, people just think like you just have your shit together, like Amy rocks, like she's just rocking it, and it just all happened, because she's just this rock star and like her life was just beautiful, right?
Please. No.
Right? Like, but that's what people think, and sometimes even we've learned as co-founders, we see ourselves as peers in the profession, but sometimes students will say like, but you're the CEO, or like, you guys are the co-founders, like you're kind of intimidating. And so people don't want to talk, and so I think it breaks down some barriers where someone's, can email you and say, hey, me too, too, or I need a person. The VIN Foundation, they have that, it's like peer-to-peer, where you can actually, if you're not ready for a mental health professional, but you want to open up to someone, you need a bigger support network. They have this, peer-to-peer relationship building. Right. And so I think, people just are able to relate and then have that breakthrough when they could have a conversation, with you or something like that. And even if you guys are best friends for life, just knowing that that's the catalyst.
Right.
So
you don't have to be. Sometimes it's almost easier to, for lack of a better word, dump it all out on like whatever, a stranger, because then you don't have to talk to that person tomorrow or next week. You can just go, bleh, I feel so much better. And then you just move on.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes it's yeah, just emptying out. We'll let it happen because we're just not designed to carry it around. So
we're not. That's why
man.
bartenders do what they do, right? Bartenders hear everybody's stories, right?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. This has been awesome. We could go
Renee,
on like
thank
this
you
for
this time and
You're
for
welcome.
this chance. It's been great. I loved it.
You're welcome so much. We are going to stay connected, Amy and I. We're going to do different things, I'm sure, you know, professionally together, but we'll stay connected. And like we said, if you want to connect, I'll put it in the show notes. You can connect with Amy on LinkedIn or through email, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you for your time today.
Absolutely.
It's been great, Renee. Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Right back at you. Enjoy the weekend. We'll talk
soon. Likewise. Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.